the fact that I got out of bed today was pretty brave and courageous. You know what? Actually, the fact that I'm showing up to this job day in and day out that isn't really fulfilling me, that takes courage. That takes bravery.
Welcome to the Core Happiness Podcast. I'm your host, Casey Banks, a mindset and positive psychology coach. On this podcast, we discuss all things related to creating happiness from within. So, let's do it. Welcome back to the show. Today, I am joined by Renee Zukin, an author, educator, and mental health advocate whose work centers on courage, authenticity, and healing through the written word. With more than 20 years of experience in education, writing, and entrepreneurship, Renee has helped countless people use writing as a tool for self-discovery and transformation. Her forthcoming self-help memoir, Every Day I'm Brave, invites us to redefine what it really means to live with fear and still choose courage. She is here today to walk us through what that means, how to embrace it, and just how to live life fully. Let's dive in. Renee, welcome to the show. It's so lovely to have you on.
Oh, thank you. I'm so thrilled to be here.
Before we get into kind of the science behind things, you describe yourself as someone who does the inner work to see outer change. So I want to start with just your explanation of what that means to you personally.
Doing the inner work to see outer change, for me is, well, it's multifaceted, but mostly it's like we can't really see change unless we're willing to do some of that work ourselves. Like, if we got to be part of the process, we're all connected. This is a whole big, wide, collective world we're living in. And so it really is this willingness to look at ourselves both as, who we are individually, how we are a part of this collective, and what we really desire to see in the world, because I also feel like we're really mirrors for each other. So if we want to see change in the world, it really starts with ourselves.
I love the mirror of each other. I genuinely believe that each one of us is a teacher and a student. So I think that we can learn from each other, but I also think that we have something to give that others can learn from.
Oh my gosh, I love that so much. I 100% agree.
So I absolutely love the work you do. And I know that you kind of weave together education, mindfulness, and writing into what you do as sort of like I'll call it a doorway into healing.
Yeah.
And I know that that is a little bit of what inspired your book, Every Day I'm Brave. But when you think about the idea of being brave every day, like, what is it exactly that inspired you to write the book?
So it really came to a moment in my life where things were pretty rough. And I was busy comparing myself to the people around me, as we do, especially in the era of social media. And I was just seeing people do things that I was too afraid to do. And we're talking about simple things. Like, for me at the time, eating with other people was a really big struggle for all sorts of reasons that I get into in the book. I wasn't traveling, and I was partnered with a person who worked internationally. So he was always hopping on airplanes and going off to all sorts of adventurous places. And I was sitting here having this, a little bit of a pity party of like, I'm never going to be able to do these things. And then I kind of got angry. I was like, you know what? Actually, the fact that I got out of bed today was pretty brave and courageous. You know what? Actually, the fact that I'm showing up to this job day in and day out that isn't really fulfilling me, that takes courage. That takes bravery. And so this moment like started this whole catalyst for, oh, actually, let me recognize the things that I do that are brave. And you know what? I'm brave every day, like all these little things. And my brave doesn't have to be what somebody else's is. I may never jump out of an airplane, but that doesn't make me any less brave or courageous than somebody else. That's just not my thing. Having this like epiphany of bravery is really this spectrum. And what's brave for one person isn't for the other, and that's okay. It allowed me to release a lot of that shame that I was carrying because I couldn't do what other people were doing. And because I was able to start meeting myself in that place and recognize the strengths that I had, I was able to start shifting, working these brave muscles so that I could start doing the things that I did really want to do that I was afraid of doing. So it was really quite a moment, and hence it became the title of the book.
Yeah, I love that because I think the definition of strength has changed over time, but I think now it is the sort of the push to get through hard times. Like you're not supposed to be vulnerable, like you're not supposed to have any down moments, like you're just supposed to always be on and you're supposed to go. And that's the definition of strength. And I know so many of us are told that we are kind of have to keep it together, right?
Right.
You always have to be on, you always have to be together. It's kind of that duck on water scenario where you're always calm externally, everything's going great, nothing's wrong, you're able to handle it all. And underneath the water, underneath the surface, like it's chaotic and that's reality. But nobody
Mhm.
wants to show that because that is somehow a weakness.
Right.
And I'm curious when you think of the performance of strength, how we believe we need to show up in terms of being strong. What does performance of strength mean to you personally? And like, how did you start to notice when it was showing up?
I love this. And I love the picture you're painting too of what we're kind of told we're supposed to show up like in society versus what everyone truly is doing underneath. Like, there's not a single one of us who is out here not having a challenge. Like, and of course, how we handle it makes a difference. But what you're speaking to, this idea of having to put on the strong face or the brave face or have it all together, like for me, practicing that all the time is exhausting. And what I'm loving about having these conversations is that the narrative around strength and resilience is really starting to shift. There is a recognition that sometimes vulnerability and showing emotion is actually a sign of strength, more strength than it is to cover it up. And I'm not saying, when you're in your like messy, on the floor, curled in a ball moments, we're not saying we got to all be there and show everybody. There's certainly privacy and having your closest people be the ones who get to bear witness to some of your hardest moments. It's not for everybody, but to be real about showing up, and especially with anxiety. I'll come to a talk, especially in person, I get more nervous in my body. Like, I'll start a talk often with, "Hey, everybody, let's just take a collective breath because I'm a little nervous up here." Right. And just naming it lets everybody else like be okay with where they are. And it allows us to all collectively reset together. And so there's really this authentic way that I believe each of us can show up that we're told don't cry in front of other people or whatever, the stories that we've
It's a
heard,
big one.
right? You know what? It's a beautiful thing. We are human. If you need to shed a tear, shed the tear and let's make space for it.
What I love about that is it's so powerful to hear that there can be a shift from managing the image to meeting ourselves where we are honestly. And that honesty is a form of courage because it does take courage to be vulnerable. But then I think the other part of that I often hear is, well, when I'm being vulnerable, that can be scary, right? Or I have to have confidence to be vulnerable. And so I need to work on confidence first so I can be brave enough to be vulnerable. And I'm wondering if it is the other way around, right? Because a lot of times to build confidence, you have to take an action first.
Absolutely. Like, we keep waiting to feel ready. We're never going to feel all the way ready. It's
Absolutely.
Yeah. It
Yes.
just doesn't happen. And the people you think, oh, they've got it all put together, they're underneath there swimming with their little duck feet too. So
So then what does it look like to have that radical bravery in everyday life that isn't a huge heroic act, but it's just something small or like
mm,
a small daily win that
mm,
could look like radical bravery for people who are thinking that they need confidence first?
I love this question. And it truly can look different each day and each moment. And for some of us, depending on whether you're dealing with some self doubt or imposter syndrome, I work a lot with women writers and women entrepreneurs. And that is a vulnerable, anxious, self doubt kind of phase because you're having to show up, you're having to be visible, you're having to put yourself out there. And no matter what it is that you're doing out in the world, when those critical voices in your head are louder than you would like them to be, it takes that courage to be there and do the thing anyway. Take action anyway. We really only get to build those confidence muscles by doing things in repetition. One of the things I talk about in the book is through a lot of the therapy and different types of things that I've used, the different tools, a lot of it is very much action oriented, especially when it comes to anxiety and self-doubt, because you can spend so much time spinning your wheels worrying about what might happen. And just taking that one small step toward the thing can shift all of that feeling in an instant. So that small step, that everyday bravery, maybe it's sending the email you've been putting off. Maybe it's, writing an article for your local newspaper about the thing you're really passionate about, but you're a little afraid to tell people your opinion, right?
Mhm.
So it can be these really quote unquote small wins, but they feel so big for you. And it starts sending a new message in your brain and body about what you're capable of doing. And often the thing we're scared of turns out to be far less scary than we think it will be.
For me, writing is like the superpower. It's just something I've been doing for a very long time. I was writing poetry at like 9 years old. Like it's the way that I express myself. So much so that even like I'm having a difficult conversation or even in relationships, I'm like, you know what? Let me write this down and get back to you.
100%.
Like,
Both hands raised here.
let me write you a
I don't
letter
know what
about
I'm
how I
thinking
feel.
until I write it.
So when I'm thinking about that and I'm thinking about writing, I'm curious because I know that you also are a writing coach. How is it like? Because maybe it's I don't know if it's storytelling. I don't know if that's storytelling is a part of getting to know ourselves. But as a writing coach, do you find that storytelling helps us to uncover our inner trust or helps us rediscover ourselves?
Mm.
What have you found with
Yeah,
writing?
absolutely. I think storytelling is a huge component for really learning about ourselves, and storytelling and being able to express ourselves and our stories is healing in many, many ways. But even, if we were to back it up a little bit, even just a journaling practice, even
Mm,
just, okay, I'm going to sit down for 5 minutes to try to figure out why the heck I feel so intense right now. Um, one of the things that writing has always allowed me to do, we just kind of joked about it, is like I can see my own thoughts. When, we're dealing with so many thoughts at once and things are intense, we're anxious or we're cloudy or we're just, having big feelings, uh, just the process of putting pen to paper or even, thumbs on your notes app now, right? Just the act of doing that, it kind of bypasses the part of your brain that is just doing all the thinking. And, after a couple of minutes, there's this flow that begins. And I've seen this even with my clients who profess to me from the very beginning that they're not writers. Like suddenly this opens up this flow and you're able to access different parts of your thoughts and feelings that you aren't in other ways. And then you've got this tangible thing to look at, right? This
mhm.
thing that is outside of you now. It releases some of that intensity. It takes it down and you're able to see, I like to call it the bird's eye view. You're really able to see, what is this I'm challenged by right now? Oh, and here are some things I'm saying. And oh, this really rings true for me. And you just have a much better picture and perspective on whatever it is that you're dealing with in the moment so that you can make some choices moving forward from a place that's so much more clear and centered. But getting it out on that tangible piece of paper just shifts it. So I think that's a really important place to start. So even, for any of the listeners who are like, "Oh, well, I'm not a writer and I've never kept a journal." You can start real small. Just get a scrap of paper and something to write with. And what am I thinking right now? Right now I'm thinking, and then you just go. I set timers all the time. Start with 2 minutes, 5 minutes, 8 minutes, and you'll be amazed at what you uncover.
Yeah. A lot of pushback that I get is like, well, I'm not a writer. I don't know really how to write or to keep a journaling practice, or just start with something small. It could be, like the book The Artist's Way, where there's morning pages and setting 2 minutes and it's just stream of consciousness. So you don't have to think about writing. You don't have to think about what I have to think about what I need to think about to put onto paper. It's like, no,
Correct.
stream of consciousness. Just whatever comes to mind comes out in a pen. Or like you said, I love your analogy of like thumbs on the app, right? Like it just
Real
comes out.
Yeah.
And I think that's a small way to at least start a type of writing practice and just to see like small benefits of it. But I'm curious, do you have any particular prompt or exercise that you recommend when someone is trying to reconnect with bravery, or they're trying to build self-trust through journaling?
I love that phrase, self-trust, because we do. Like anxiety, depression, all those things can tell us lies, right? And we're like, what's really true for me? What's not? And I think one of the things I love using sentence starters, right? Unfinished sentences. And, you could start with something simple like, what's true for me is, and see what goes from there. There's so many different prompts out there. I've got some on my website, but I'll often use all sorts of things as prompts, right? Maybe I read my horoscope and there's a line that sticks out and I'll be like, ooh, let me think about that one a little more. Or, I'll pull a card or I'll have a conversation with a friend who says something really insightful, right? And I'll just pull a couple of those words that I hear. But I really think, especially for that deeper inner work, what's true for me now, or even today, something's going to fill in. Today, I want to feel. Today, I want to, whatever it is, and see what comes out, because in most cases, it'll be a truth that really resonates with you.
One of the things that I think about too is the authenticity. So, like, even in writing and allowing that authenticity to come through can sometimes be dampened by a lot of what you're talking about, like that external pressure. I know we talked about bravery and we talked about like performing confidence versus being confident. And I'm curious if you've had a time where you've had to create that distinction for someone, right? Like the distinction between performing confidence and then trusting yourself and your authenticity to come through.
The lines get a little blurry,
Mm-hmm.
especially when you're talking about maybe showing up and having to give a talk at work or a presentation, right? Or even just having that difficult conversation with a loved one, like, how can I show up and share my authentic thoughts and feelings in a way that feels safe? And I think there's a lot of safety involved, because it can be, we can't control other people's reactions. And so kind of surrendering to that, right? How am I going to show up in my most authentic truth, regardless of what I think somebody might come back at me with? But this discernment between, confidence versus authenticity. And I think that what's so important is that it feels like when you're nervous, you may not be able to tap into that so much in your body, right? Like your nervous system, maybe your heart's racing a little bit, or you feel like you can't catch your breath, or, the butterflies in the stomach. And being able to ground yourself is a really great way to be able to feel safe, even if you're not quite sure how things are going to go. And I'll often do that with different kinds of visualization. I will often actually speak or perform without shoes to keep my feet as grounded as possible. Or I'll just imagine that, like, I've got tree roots. It might sound silly, but visualizing the strength
Hmm.
and the grounding,
Doesn't sound
it
silly to me.
works. Yeah, it works. I know so many more people are using it. It becomes less and less silly, but which is great because that's how we have to stay centered, especially when we're being vulnerable, especially when we're and
Hmm.
and surrendering to, what may come back at us.
Yeah, and it's a thing you said that really hit me was the safety, the authenticity. I think the more people start to show authenticity that is accompanied by the anxiety,
Yeah.
or the fear of judgment, and there is a sense of lack of safety, especially in social media. And it's like, what are people going to think of me? And the societal pressure of the fact that authenticity is not really valued as much outwardly in our external world, right? Like when you think of society, you think of social media, it's you're supposed to do a certain thing or act a certain way or look a certain way, all the way down from facial features to what we wear, right? Like it's very much the opposite almost of
Mhm.
authenticity. So when people start to embrace authenticity, it's this moment of like, I don't know if this is right. What are they going to say? What are they going to do? What are they going to think? And I love the idea of what you said with sometimes with authenticity, it's important to make sure that you stay grounded. And from your perspective, like when you show up authentically, what does that look like for you today versus like years ago?
Oh, yeah, great question. Years ago, I probably couldn't have even done something like this where I'm showing up having these authentic conversations. Now that I'm able to sit and talk about these kinds of things and sharing authentically in the book. I mean, the stories that I share in the book, many are very personal. I did a lot of work on this sense of safety, so much so that I even hired a belief coding coach who really worked with me on the idea that visibility is unsafe and this belief that it was unsafe to put myself out there authentically and honestly. So that was a great investment. I encourage anybody who's going to
Yeah, that sounds amazing.
launch their personal work out into the world to have somebody like that. But like being in this space of I'm going to show up today at whatever capacity I'm at, and maybe a little more. I mean, certainly there is a sense of, okay, we're recording, this is going to go out into the world, people are going to listen. There's always going to be this sense of, okay, I want to show up as my best self,
Mm.
which is different than a fake self. And I think that's the real distinction. For me, my best self looks to be I was going to say there's a clarity, there's a purpose. And despite the challenges that are currently happening in my life, because life is always in session, right?
Mhm.
We're all in the midst of some things, or just the collective transformation that this world seems to be under right now. To be able to show up as my best self versus a fake self, right? Is that I can speak to the fact that, oh, I am having a challenging time and I'm still able to hold the space because it's meaningful and it's true for me.
Mhm. That's pretty powerful. What role does self compassion or community play into that? Like in terms of holding that space, staying grounded, even growing? Like, in your opinion, what role does that play?
I think self compassion is vital to changing anything in our lives. And I think it really is the first step in being able to identify the things that we are grateful for and the things that we want to see shift.
Mhm.
When we're able to meet ourselves with self compassion, when the struggle is real, then we're not also adding on layers of like the shame that can lead to this feeling of inertia, really. You
Mhm.
know, the shame and the judgment that we are often telling ourselves or that's been so ingrained in our minds, like when we are struggling, when we feel like we can't show up, when it's hard to get out of bed, when we don't want to pick up the phone and have this conversation. If we add the shame on top of it, it gives it all so much more weight. And instead, if we're able to give ourselves some self-compassion, like, okay, I may not be able to have this conversation today, but I'm going to journal about it so I can have this conversation tomorrow, right? To meet
Mhm.
yourself where you're at. One of the examples I talk about in my book is working through this exercise of walking bridges. Um, I have a enormous fear of heights, and for me, even doing like a second story, I call them bridges, but they're like walkways, was
Mhm.
really, really difficult. And one of the things that I was working through was this practice of walking bridges. And some days I couldn't do it. There were just times where it felt impossible. And if I were to continue to beat myself up about that, I never would have tried again. Maybe I took a moment and said, "Oh, come on, Renee, you should be able to do this," right? But when I
Mhm.
let go of that, I was able to just accept, okay, today I couldn't, but I can try again tomorrow, or I can try again at the end of my session. When you can
Mhm.
show up with compassion, you show up with more curiosity instead of judgment. And it allows for things to move and to shift and to give space and voice to what kind of experience do I wanna have instead, and how can I get there from this place of love instead of fear?
That is so incredibly beautiful because I like the fact that it's just like, you know what, I couldn't that day, but that's okay because I can come back another day. It almost releases the pressure. Sometimes for some people, it might be perfectionism, or maybe it's the pressure to perform, the pressure to always be strong, to keep going, or whatever. But to give yourself the grace to say, you know what, I can't today. And that's okay.
Yeah.
That is completely okay because there is tomorrow and we will try again tomorrow. I think it's so incredibly beautiful. And I'm curious because I know that you obviously work with writers, you work with creatives. Is that how you kind of coach them to work through their fear of being seen for who they truly are or putting their work out into the world, is to work on that level of self-compassion?
Absolutely. Absolutely, it's part of it, and especially, like, we starting in small doses, right? Even this idea of, "Oh, I'm not a writer," right?
Mhm.
Like, for you, why
Mhm.
aren't you able to call yourself a writer or a musician or whatever your creative passions may be. It's
Mhm.
just a writer is somebody who writes. So if you're sitting down and writing something, you're a writer. So there's definitely this piece of when you're building that visibility muscle that you absolutely have to meet yourself with compassion because it's going to feel really scary. And maybe it's okay, I posted this one thing on social media, nobody's liked it, right? It's been there for hours and nobody's liked it. First of all, let's look at the evidence. Maybe the algorithm isn't playing in your favor, and congratulate yourself because you did it. Like, start there. And you know what? And you can do it again tomorrow. And maybe, you post a picture with it and with your words, and that changes things. One of the things that you had begun to touch on was community. And I
Mhm.
think it is so vital when you're doing your creative work and you're wanting to put it out in the world that you are surrounding yourself with people who, as Brene Brown said, have earned the right
Mm.
because they're in the arena with you, right?
Yeah.
You have to be with others on the path who get how challenging it can be, who understand the mindset work that you have to do and move through in order to put your creative work out in the world, to put your story out in the world. It takes courage and it takes community to remind you of how strong and brave and creative that you are and how much you have worked at this thing, and celebrate those small wins with you because, without that, it can be so easy to get bogged down in our own perspective. And often we are not the kindest to ourselves
Mm.
in this process.
Beautifully said. And what would you say to someone who's listening and they feel like they've lost their bravery?
Mm.
And maybe it's because of community, maybe it's because of expectations work, whatever. Maybe it's external, maybe it's internal. But
Yeah.
they've been playing small for so long that they haven't been taking up space. And so the idea of taking up space, being brave, being authentic is just foreign, and they just feel like they don't even know where to begin. What would
Mm.
you tell them as far as where to begin?
Mm. What I heard you say at the beginning too is for somebody who's lost their sense of bravery and courage.
Yes.
Because there are moments in our lives where it feels easy. Okay, I'm going to try this thing. I feel good. I got my people. I'm going to do this thing. Yeah. And then there's moments where, like you said, it feels utterly hopeless and so out of reach. And for anybody who is out there and having a moment or many moments in a row where this sense of bravery just feels, foreign and intangible, the first step is really a sense of curiosity to just be aware that you do feel this way, right? Like
Hmm.
yesterday was a really tough day for me. Some things happened and I didn't feel very brave. I didn't feel very confident that I was going to be able to shift out of that. And so I went to bed early. And what I have learned is that our thoughts and feelings are always changeable and they're always shifting. And so if it feels impossible in the moment, just hang on because something will shift. And it might be the slightest imperceivable shift, but it'll happen. Oftentimes for me, resting changes the perspective. Eating something generally healthy can change the perspective. If all you have the energy to do is go sit outside, like go put your hands on the tree trunk or your feet in the grass and allow yourself to be in that moment. And you may not notice it immediately, but it will feed the shift that you need in order to get to a place where you'll believe in the hope again.
Mm. Mm. It's almost like the rest that's needed to ground. It's like all of it really sort of comes back down to rest sometimes, like in
Mhm.
terms of the first small step, like
Yeah.
the building the muscle of the self trust again, especially after years of self doubt or people pleasing to where you don't feel brave. And I think it's actually quite interesting how it's usually that, especially for women, I know you're stepping from a place of bravery to be a people pleaser, right? It's, I'm going to sacrifice myself to make these people happy or to do this thing so that it's keeping the peace. I will be the peacekeeper. I'm
Yeah.
stepping into this bravery of being a peacekeeper. But then over time, you do start to lose the sense of bravery because you're playing so small day
Mhm.
after day.
Mhm.
And so I think it's so interesting that I think, at least what I'm hearing is one of the main steps is to just give yourself some space, give yourself rest, whether it's stepping outside to be grounded or whether it's going to bed early, like
Yeah.
you said. Let's just give yourself the space to even think to be curious.
Yeah.
And so I thought that was beautiful.
Yeah. Well, and for so many of us, women especially, when we are, people pleasing perfectionists, everybody's demanding our attention for all sorts of things. We've been taught that we have to be productive all the time. And to shift your perspective, that rest is actually one of the most productive things you can do
Yeah. Hmm.
because without it, you're not going to be able to move through life at the capacity that you're able to. Rest is necessary and impactful. And we really don't give ourselves enough time and space to rest without guilt.
Yeah. That guilt.
That
Ugh.
guilt. Oh, sneaky.
Yes, that's so true. I think the main blocker between the want and the action, like I want rest, but for me to take rest, there's that guilt is right in between. And I can't take the rest because now I feel guilty if I do.
Right.
And I think we need to put more emphasis on what happens if I don't take
Yes.
that, because a lot of times that overcomes that guilt
If
when you realize it's a necessity.
what is the risk I'm taking by not resting? Yeah.
Mhm,
How is it
mhm.
going to damage these next few things?
Exactly. But we don't think about it from that perspective.
Right. I love that. So good.
I know that you work with students and entrepreneurs as well, and you have for years. And I'm curious if there's any patterns that you notice in how maybe they confuse strength with suppression.
Hmm. Strength with suppression. That's a good one. What I find as far as a pattern is that, especially for the perfectionist parts of ourselves,
Mhm,
like they may, you know, all the things on the task list, right?
mhm,
And especially if they're not getting the results, for my
mhm,
entrepreneurs out there, when you're not getting the results that you really want to be getting and you're working so hard and you're doing all the things, what is that I like to call productive procrastination? I can make myself real busy doing all sorts of tasks. I'm working really hard, but maybe not on the things that I know or have been shown to get me the results that I want. Whether we're talking about clients or we're talking about, the algorithm, or we're talking about just being able to produce something that's authentic and creative and exciting for you,
mhm,
um, because you're suppressing, right, the parts of you that maybe are a little scared of success. And we don't
mhm,
talk about this very often. But there are a lot of folks, especially in the entrepreneurial world, who have a deep fear of success, because then it means, right? It could mean so many things. Oh, then it means I got to show up this way all the time, or it means I'm going to have to spend so many more hours with my clients, or it means, whatever. And so we'll get stuck in these cycles of productive procrastination. And I'll raise both my hands on that one too, because I see it in myself.
mhm. Same.
We come by it honestly.
Yes. But I think that's so true. I know for myself, I definitely am known to do that. And I do think that there is an underlying of operating from fear. Also, I know I definitely have a fear of success, but it's more so that once you become successful, it's the pressure to continue, like you essentially just said, right? It's the
Right.
pressure to continue to perform at a certain level.
Yep.
And when you are an entrepreneur, it takes a lot. And I think that sometimes we confuse that it takes a lot to be successful. It takes a lot of work. It takes a lot of sacrifices. But then I also think that there is the level of fear that does cause the procrastination by productivity. I'm still
Yep.
doing, so I feel like I'm being successful, but really I'm suppressing.
Takes one to know one.
Right. Yeah.
Well, and the awareness of it, right? Because you're
Yes.
able to see it, then you can make a different choice.
Exactly. And that goes back to the community, I think, too, because sometimes it does take somebody outside of you to be like, you're doing it again.
Yep.
You're-
Yep.
Sometimes our circles are mirror. So
Yes.
it sometimes takes the circle to be like, you're really not moving forward. You're just kind of procrastinating.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, yes,
Absolutely.
I'm doing it again.
Yeah. That accountability piece is so huge.
So huge.
Any change or trying to, any goal, creative or otherwise, like accountability is vital. And so find those people who you're willing to let keep you accountable, whether that's, hiring a coach or calling on some sister besties to keep each other in line. I've got accountability buddies all over the place because, it's hard for us to show up for just ourselves.
It is.
It's just the human experience. It just is.
Well, what I love about this conversation is that it seems like bravery can show up in many different places, like in terms of in being more aware, in being more self-compassionate. And so for me, it's allowing me to think of bravery as like a practice rather than just a moment.
Absolutely.
And a part of that practice seems to be maybe rediscovering, but then definitely like trusting yourself again.
Mhm. Mhm. Absolutely. Yeah, that's beautiful. I love the idea of bravery as a practice. It's a muscle. It's this thing that we're constantly working on and toward. And it can be anywhere along that spectrum. And, your bravery one day can look vastly different than your bravery another day. And all of
Mm.
that is okay.
Absolutely. As we wrap up, I do want to bring it full circle with your book title because I do love it, The Everyday I'm Brave. And I'm curious, when you think of the phrase, every day I'm brave, what does it mean to you today? Like, not as the author or the teacher or the coach, but as you, Renee, the human.
Whew, I suddenly got a little emotional. Every day I'm brave is the way in which I am now able to hold myself and my experience of life in a whole different light than, even just a few years ago. While the phrase in that moment that I spoke to at the beginning of our call came to me probably in like 2010 or 11. I mean, it was a long time ago that I've been carrying it with me. The fear and the strength, the fear and the courage, and the full spectrum of this life experience, the good, the bad, the inner, the outer. Like everything here on earth is this duality. And every day we can show up and practice new ways of holding the both and that exists here in a way that allows us to stay more connected with one another, to be in a more compassionate, loving world, and to do that inner work to see the outer change because it is the ripple effect of being able to meet ourselves where we're at that allows others to also do the same.
That is powerful. If you could leave our listeners with one main takeaway or message, what would it be?
Have a little fun. You'll find your way through.
Yeah. That's a very important message because I think when we get into the everyday cadence, or some people call it the grind of life, and we are just on this hamster wheel and every day is the same, and it's like we feel like we have to schedule this big
Mhm.
vacation or something to just have some fun. And what I think a lot of people don't realize is like the vacations are great, beautiful, but what we really need is the way to figure out how to sprinkle in that fun
Mhm.
in much smaller,
Yeah.
more attainable ways that are far more consistent.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of times, like, I think the quality of life would be better. Like, when people talk about work-life balance, to
Right.
me, that's what work-life balance is. It's
Mhm.
like, let's sprinkle in more fun in
Yeah.
just the day-to-day. Even though we
Yep.
spend so much hours at work, like, that's why we need more
Mhm.
fun.
Mhm.
Beautiful. Renee, thank you so much for such a beautiful, honest conversation. And thank you for reminding us that bravery isn't just about like never feeling afraid. It's about showing up with our whole selves and our whole heart. Thank you so much. And if you want to tell listeners where they can find your book and how they
Yeah.
can contact you.
Oh, thank you. This has been such an honor and a pleasure to have this conversation with you. And if
Same.
you, want to find out more, www.everydayimbrave.com will get you everything you need and more. So thank you so much.
I thank you for joining me today. If you enjoyed this podcast, please feel free to rate it or leave a review. If you have any thoughts or questions, I would love to hear from you. You can email podcast@corehappiness.com. For show notes and additional resources, you can visit www.corehappiness.com. As always, please remember, never let anyone diminish your light. Until next time, sending you my love.